She texted at 9:47 on a Sunday night. Business conference extended. Be home next week. I stared at the screen. In the dark kitchen, the glow cold against my face. Outside, December wind rattled the barn doors. I could hear the metal hasp clinking, the same sound my father heard, and his father before him. I typed slowly, each word deliberate. Don't rush. The estate sale starts today. 2 minutes. That's how long it took her to reply. Please don't. I set the phone down beside the soil ledger. 40 years of Sunday mornings, 12 plots, every test recorded in the same hand. My hand. The ink had faded on the early pages, but the discipline hadn't. The bank envelope sat unopened near the coffee pot. I'd been avoiding it for 3 days. White, official, the kind that changes things. I opened it. Your recent loan application. $180,000 reverse mortgage approved. My signature at the bottom, except it wasn't. The middle name was spelled wrong, Warren Hollis. I never misspelled my own name in 68 years. The morning had started the way every Sunday started for 40 years. 5:30, boots by the door, thermos of black coffee already brewing, the kind of dark you get in December before the sun remembers how to rise. I'd walk the fence line first, checking posts. Frozen ground makes you notice things, where the earth has shifted, where roots have pushed up, where time has done its patient work. The wind came sharp across the fields, carrying the smell of diesel from the idling tractor and something else. Cold metal, the scent of winter machinery, oil that won't warm, steel that bites when you touch it barehanded. The soil probe went into the earth harder than it should have. Frozen, 2 inches down. I had to use my boot heel to drive it deeper, feeling the resistance, the earth holding on to itself. Steam rose from my coffee cup where I'd set it on the fence post. My breath clouded in front of me, disappearing into the gray light. Plot 1, pH 6.8, same as last week. Plot 2, 6.9, creeping up, needed lime in the spring. I recorded each number in the ledger at the kitchen table afterward, the ritual as fixed as the sunrise. The book sat open under the lamp, pages yellowed at the edges, my handwriting changing across the decades. Tight and careful in the early years when my father was still watching. Looser now, confident. The entries went back to 1985, but before that were my father's numbers, and before that his father's. The paper so old it felt like fabric. That's when her text came through. The phone buzzed against the Formica table, next to the week-old coffee ring I kept meaning to wipe up. I almost didn't look. Crystal never texted during her conferences. She'd call, usually late, voice tired but professional, just checking in, long day, miss you, the script of a marriage on autopilot. But this was text, and it was shorter than usual. Business conference extended, be home next week. I read it twice. She'd been gone since Thursday. 3 nights had become 7. The extension sat wrong, like a board that doesn't quite fit the frame. I typed my reply with the same deliberation I used to record pH levels. Don't rush. The estate sale starts today. I watched the 3 dots appear, disappear, appear again, then, please don't. Not what estate sale, not what are you talking about, just please don't. That's when I knew she'd been caught. The envelope had been sitting there since Thursday, same day she'd left for Des Moines. White, legal-sized, return address from First Rural Bank of Nebraska. I'd seen it when I came in from the evening feeding, set it aside. Told myself I'd open it after supper, then after the news, then tomorrow. Some part of me already knew. I used the butter knife to slit it open, the paper tearing with a whisper. Inside, 3 pages, folded crisp. The letterhead swam into focus under the kitchen lamp. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Hollis, congratulations on the approval of your reverse mortgage application. Your loan in the amount of $180,000 has been finalized as of June 15, 2024. June. 6 months ago. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I'd expected rage, the hot kind that makes men do stupid things. But what came was colder. Clarity, sharp as the morning air. The second page showed the terms. The third showed the signatures. Mine was near the bottom, notarized, official, except the middle name, Lewis, was spelled Luis. Close enough to fool a tired notary, not close enough to fool the man who'd signed his name 10,000 times across 4 decades of tax returns, feed bills, and county extension reports. I pulled the ledger closer, flipped to a random page. March 2019. My signature, at the bottom, dated and witnessed by my own habit. Warren Lewis Hollis. Every letter where it belonged. The coffee had gone cold in my cup. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the gap in the barn doors I'd been meaning to fix since September. The sound was almost alive. A keening thing. The phone buzzed again. Another text. Warren, please. Let me explain. I turned the phone face down. Some explanations come too late. Some trust once broken stays broken clean through. Like frozen ground, you can't work it until the thaw. And I wasn't sure I wanted the thaw. I sat in the kitchen as dawn came slow and gray, the ledger open in front of me, the bank letter beside it. 2 documents, 2 versions of my name. Only one of them true. She'd been planning this since summer. While I tested soil and fixed fence and believed in the steadiness of 43 years, the Red Oak Diner smelled like it always did. Burnt coffee, bacon grease, and pine sol from the 5 a.m. mopping. I pushed through the door Monday morning, the bell clanging overhead, and the conversation stopped. Not all at once. That would have been too obvious, but I felt it, the way you feel a shift in air pressure before a storm. Maureen Pike glanced up from the register, her smile faltering. Eddie Kolchak, 3 stools down, suddenly found his scrambled eggs fascinating. Even the cook, Tommy, pulled back from the window. I took my usual spot at the counter, second from the end, next to where Deacon Ferris sat every morning for the last 40 years. His coffee was already half gone, steam rising in the cold air every time the door opened. Warren. He didn't look at me when he said it. Deacon. The vinyl stool creaked under my weight, cracked from decades of farmers sliding on and off. The counter was cool formica, smooth except where someone had carved their initials near the napkin holder. The radio played low in the background, agricultural report, corn futures down 2 cents. Maureen came over with the pot, poured without asking. Her perfume cut through the diner smell, something floral and heavy. White shoulders, same thing my mother used to wear. The usual? Her voice was careful, like she was talking to someone sick. Just coffee. She nodded and retreated, too quickly. I wrapped both hands around the mug, feeling the heat through the thick ceramic. The coffee tasted bitter, overbrewed, Monday morning batch, sitting since opening. Deacon set his own mug down, the sound deliberate. You need to know what people are saying. I'm not sure I'm ready. You need to be. He pulled a napkin from the dispenser, unfolded it on the counter. Didn't write anything, just smoothed it flat with his calloused palm. A delaying tactic. Deacon had pulled me from a burning Huey in '69, carried me 100 yards through elephant grass with his shoulder half gone. The man didn't delay unless the news was bad. Maureen, he called over, come here a minute. She approached like she was walking to her own sentencing, dish rag twisted in her hands. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Tell him, Deacon said. She looked at the counter, at the napkin, at anything but me. Crystal came by the Farm Bureau office back in October, asked about property valuations. She twisted the rag tighter, said it was for insurance purposes, updating your policy. October, before the loan, before the conference. Who else knows? Maureen's silence was answer enough. Half the damn town, Deacon said. Saw her at the Ramada in Omaha 2 weeks ago. She wasn't alone. The diner bell rang. 3 people came in, shaking off the cold, laughing about something. The sound felt obscene. Who was she with? My voice came out level, flat. Lyle Tremaine. The name hit like a fist. Lyle Tremaine, estate liquidator, the kind who circled family farms like a vulture watching for injured cattle. He'd bought out 3 operations in the last year alone. Paid pennies on the dollar, sold for development within 6 months. You're sure? Eddie saw them too, at the hotel bar. Deacon finally looked at me. His eyes were old, tired. Warren, she didn't look like she was there for insurance. I took a drink of coffee. It had gone lukewarm, thick. How long have you known? Week and a half. Wanted to be sure before I said anything. The radio announcer droned on about soybean prices in Brazil. Someone laughed too loud from a back booth. The cook scraped the griddle, metal on metal, a sound that set my teeth on edge. I stood up, left a $5 bill on the counter, didn't finish the coffee. Warren, Maureen started. Thank you for telling me. Outside, the cold hit like a slap. My truck was parked on Main Street, covered in road salt and yesterday's mud. The sun was up now, pale and useless behind gray clouds. Sleet had started to fall, tiny pellets that clicked against the windshield. I sat in the cab with the engine running, heater blowing cold air that would take 10 minutes to warm. My hands on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Lyle Tremaine, the man who'd convinced Bill Henderson to sell his dairy operation for half what it was worth, who'd shown up at Martha Krantz's door 3 days after her husband died, papers already drawn up, who smiled with too many teeth and talked about opportunity while families packed up century-old homesteads. Now he had his eyes on mine, and Crystal had given him the keys. My phone buzzed. Another text from her. Warren, it's not what you think. I deleted it without reading the rest. Started the truck, The wipers scraped across the windshield, clearing away the sleet, but it just kept coming. Some things, once you see them, you can't unsee. She'd been planning this since summer, and she hadn't planned it alone. Deacon showed up at the farm Tuesday afternoon with a woman I'd seen once or twice at church. She was maybe 40, dressed in dark slacks and a wool coat, carrying a leather briefcase that had seen better days. "This is Emma Ferris," Deacon said. "My daughter-in-law, the one I told you about." She shook my hand firm, the kind of grip you trust. "Mr. Hollis?" "Warren. I heard you might need a lawyer." We stood in the driveway between the house and the barn. The wind was bitter, cutting through my flannel like it wasn't there. Emma didn't seem to notice, or didn't care. Her eyes were already scanning the property, the barn, the fields, the fence line. "That's the original structure?" She pointed to the barn. "Built in 1897, my great-grandfather's hands. And the house? 1903. Been in the family since." She nodded, walking toward the barn without asking permission. Deacon and I followed. Inside, it was marginally warmer, the smell of old hay and diesel thick in the still air. Oil stains darkened the concrete floor where I parked the tractor. Tools hung on pegboard, each in its exact spot. My father's system, unchanged. Emma stopped in front of the bronze marker mounted near the door. Century Farm, Iowa Department of Agriculture. I'd forgotten it was even there. She ran her fingers over the raised letters, breath clouding in the cold. "How long has your family held this land?" 127 years. "Continuously?" "Never missed a season." She turned, and something had changed in her face. "Mr. Hollis, Warren, do you know what this means legally?" "It's a recognition. Honor thing. It's more than that." She pulled a small notebook from her coat pocket, wrote something quickly. "Century Farm designation comes with protections. Iowa Code, Section 10.7. Properties held by the same family for 100 years or more have special considerations in probate and forced sale situations." The words hung in the cold air. Forced sale. Your wife can't liquidate this property without proving agricultural abandonment or gross negligence. Emma's voice was steady, professional. "And given that you're actively farming, you are actively farming, test the soil every Sunday, have for 40 years. Do you keep records?" "In the ledger, kitchen table." "I need to see that." We walked to the house, boots crunching on gravel. Inside, the kitchen was warm, the wood stove in the corner putting out heat. The ledger sat where I'd left it, still open to Sunday's entry. Emma set her briefcase on the table, pulled out reading glasses, and began turning pages. She didn't say anything for a long time, just read, occasionally making notes. Deacon poured himself coffee from the pot I'd made that morning, offered me a cup. I shook my head. Finally, Emma looked up. "This is extraordinary. 40 years of documented stewardship, pH levels, crop rotation notes, equipment maintenance." She tapped a page. "Your father's handwriting before yours?" "And his father's before that." "Warren, this is your defense. Crystal's lawyer will try to claim the property has no current agricultural use, that it's just residential land sitting idle, ripe for liquidation." She closed the ledger carefully. "This proves otherwise." Something loosened in my chest. Not hope exactly, more like the first breath after holding it too long. "Can you stop her?" "I can try." Emma pulled papers from her briefcase. "First thing we do is file an emergency injunction to freeze any liquidation proceedings. Second, we challenge the reverse mortgage on grounds of fraud. That signature isn't yours." "How do you prove that?" "Handwriting expert. It'll cost you, but it's worth it." She looked at me directly. "I need to know if you want to fight this, really fight, because if we start down this road, it gets ugly. Depositions, court appearances, your marriage becomes public record." I thought about Crystal's text. "Please don't." "My father died on this land," I said. "Massive coronary, out by the south fence. I was 19, found him at sunrise, had to quit college, run the farm." I looked out the window at the fields, bare and frozen. "I buried him under the oak tree we planted my first year. I'm not letting someone auction off his grave for parking lot access." Emma nodded once. "Then we fight." She spent the next hour going through paperwork, the reverse mortgage documents, the separation filing I didn't know Crystal had prepared, property deeds going back 4 generations. Deacon sat quiet, drinking coffee, his presence alone a kind of scaffolding. When Emma finally packed up her briefcase, the sun was already setting, 4:30 and dark coming on. I'll file the injunction first thing Wednesday morning, she said at the door. The judge has 72 hours to rule. And if he doesn't rule in our favor, then the auction is scheduled for Saturday. She pulled on her gloves, leather worn soft. But, Warren, I've used this law before. Saved my uncle's farm 3 years ago. Same situation, spouse trying to force a sale. The Century Farm protection held. After they left, I stood in the driveway, watching their taillights disappear down the county road. The wind had picked up, carrying the smell of snow that hadn't fallen yet. 72 hours. The auction was 96 hours away. The phone rang Thursday morning while I was cleaning the coffee pot. I almost didn't answer. Unknown California number, but something made me pick up. Dad? I hadn't heard Ethan's voice in 4 years. Not since the argument about him taking the architect job in Denver, leaving Iowa behind, leaving the farm, leaving me. Ethan, silence on the line. I could hear traffic in the background, the distinctive whoosh of highway driving. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was tight, strained. Tell you what. About the diagnosis. About what's happening to you. I set the coffee pot down slowly, carefully. What diagnosis? Mom sent me a letter. Dad, if you're having memory problems, if you can't manage the farm anymore, your mother sent you a letter. The words came out flat. 3 pages. She said you've been forgetting things, getting confused. She said the doctors recommended selling the farm before it gets worse. He paused. Before you hurt yourself. I looked at the ledger on the table. 40 years of Sunday mornings, every entry in my hand. Not a single week missed, not a single number out of place. When did you get this letter? Tuesday. I called her first, but she said you'd be defensive about it, that the disease makes you paranoid. His voice cracked. Dad, I'm scared for you. Ethan, listen to me. I don't have dementia. Your mother is lying. Why would she lie about something like that? Because she's trying to take the farm. Silence. Then, Dad, she forged my signature on a reverse mortgage. 6 months ago, I just found out Sunday. That doesn't make sense. Mom wouldn't. Your mother is currently at a business conference that isn't a business conference. She's with an estate liquidator named Lyle Tremaine. They've been planning this since summer. My voice was steady, but my hands shook where I gripped the counter. She's using you, son, trying to turn you against me so you'll help her steal 127 years of family land. More silence, longer this time. I need to think about this. He sounded young suddenly, like the boy who used to help me test soil, who'd write the numbers in careful block letters while I called them out. You do that. He hung up. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after, the dial tone humming until the phone started that off-hook beeping. When I finally set it down, my hands were steady again. She'd tried to make me incompetent in my own son's eyes, tried to make him part of her theft, complicit in his own way. Some betrayals cut deeper than others. Friday morning, Emma called. The judge had denied the emergency injunction. Insufficient evidence of fraud, pending full investigation. The auction could proceed as scheduled. Saturday, tomorrow. We're not done, Emma said. I'm filing for an emergency hearing. If we can get in front of a judge. When? Monday at the earliest. The auction is tomorrow at 10 a.m. I know. Warren, I'm sorry. I really thought. It's not your fault. I hung up and stood at the kitchen window, watching sleet come down in gray sheets. The fields were invisible beyond 50 yards, the world reduced to cold and wet and the sound of ice hitting glass. The courthouse was the same building where Crystal and I had gotten our marriage license 43 years ago. Red brick, white columns, limestone steps worn smooth by a century of farmers and lawyers and people looking for justice. I climbed those steps just after noon, the sleet turning to freezing rain, each step treacherous. Inside, the marble floors echoed. The building smelled like old paper and lemon furniture polish. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the sound mixing with the click of heels somewhere down the hall. I'd come to file a formal objection to the auction. Emma had prepared the paperwork, explained it was mostly symbolic. Without the injunction, the auction would proceed, but it was something, a line in the sand. I was halfway to the clerk's office when I saw her. Crystal stood near the marriage license bureau, talking to a man in an expensive suit. Not Lyle. This one was younger, slick, cologne strong enough to smell from 10 feet away. Her lawyer, I guessed. She saw me at the same moment. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she walked toward me, heels clicking on marble. She was dressed for court, Navy suit, pearls, hair pulled back. Professional. A stranger wearing my wife's face. Warren. Her voice was quiet. Please, can we talk? We're talking. Not here. She glanced at her lawyer, who'd stopped a respectful distance away. Somewhere private. No. Warren, please. You sent our son a letter. I kept my voice low, but something in it made her step back. Told him I have dementia, that I'm incompetent. You tried to use him against me. Her face went pale. I needed him to understand. Understand what? That his mother is a thief? That's not fair. You forged my name. You took out a loan against land that's been in my family for over a century. You've been planning this with Lyle Tremaine since summer. Each word came out measured, controlled. Which part of that is unfair? People were watching now. A clerk had stopped sorting files. An elderly man on a bench pretended to read a newspaper. The lawyer took a step closer, protective. Mrs. Hollis, he said smoothly, perhaps we should— I never meant for it to go this far, Crystal said. She wasn't looking at me anymore, looking at the floor, at her hands. I couldn't do it anymore, Warren. 43 years on that farm, watching the same sunrise, the same people, the same— She stopped. I wanted more. So you decided to steal it. It's not stealing, it's half mine. The mortgage isn't. Her jaw tightened. I did what I had to do. The lawyer touched her elbow. Mrs. Hollis, we really should go. The mediation— What mediation? I looked between them. Tomorrow, Crystal said quietly. After the auction, we've scheduled a mediation hearing to finalize the separation terms. She met my eyes finally. It's over, Warren. You can fight it, but it's over. She turned and walked away, heels echoing down the hall. The lawyer followed, briefcase swinging. At the end of the corridor, she stopped, looked back once, then she was gone. I stood in the marble hallway, surrounded by the quiet murmur of county business, the shuffle of papers, the distant ring of phones. Through the tall windows, sleet continued to fall, coating everything in ice. The clerk who'd been watching approached carefully. Older woman, maybe 70, kind face, weathered by time. You need help with something, hun? I handed her the objection paperwork. She looked it over, stamped it, filed it in a drawer that would probably never be opened again. For what it's worth, she said softly, I was here when you two got your license. 1981. You looked happy. We were. I'm sorry. So am I. Outside, the ice had made the steps a death trap. I took them slow, one hand on the railing, the other holding papers that meant nothing. By the time I reached my truck, my coat was soaked through, freezing rain running down my collar. I sat in the cab with the engine running, heater struggling against the cold, the windshield fogged, then slowly cleared as the defroster kicked in. My phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. I've been thinking about what you said. I'm flying out tonight. We need to talk, face to face. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, okay. The auction was tomorrow at 10. Crystal's mediation was scheduled for 2. My son would be here somewhere in between, trying to figure out which parent to believe. I drove home through the freezing rain, wipers scraping ice, the county roads empty. At the farm, I parked in the barn, sat in the dark, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. Through the barn door, I could see the house. Kitchen light on, warm against the gray afternoon. The oak tree. Crystal and I planted on our first anniversary stood near the porch, bare branches coated in ice. According to Lyle Tremaine's liquidation plan, the one Emma had gotten a copy of through Discovery, that tree would be cut down, made room for better parking access, 42 years of growth, gone for convenience. I thought about Ethan's text, about him getting on a plane, flying across the country to see his father for the first time in 4 years, coming home to find out if his mother was a criminal or his father was losing his mind. Some choices shouldn't have to be made, but Crystal had made sure he'd have to make this one. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the ledger open in front of me. The house was too quiet, the way houses get when you're used to another person's sounds. Footsteps, running water, the soft click of a lamp being turned off. I flipped through the pages slowly, decades compressed into ink and paper. My father's handwriting from the 70s, tight and angular. Mine, starting in 1985, uncertain at first, then finding its rhythm. March 1992, a page that made me stop. The handwriting was mine, but smaller, running alongside it in careful block letters. Plot 3, 6.8 Ethans, age 7. I remembered that morning, cold spring rain, the kind that soaks through everything. He'd wanted to come with me, insisted, wore his little boots and my old cap that kept falling over his eyes. I'd let him hold the probe, guide it into the earth, let him call out the number while I recorded it. Then he'd asked if he could write it himself. His first S in soil was backwards. I'd shown him how to fix it, guided his hand. The corrected letter sat there now, slightly smudged, more permanent than either of us had known. I pulled out my phone, photographed the page, then photographed 20 more. Entries spanning 4 decades, the progression of a life lived in measurements and seasons. Emma would need these for Monday. Proof of stewardship, she'd called it. Evidence that the land wasn't abandoned, wasn't idle, wasn't just dirt waiting to be sold. But looking at Ethan's backwards S, I realized it was more than evidence. It was the answer to a question he'd asked 4 years ago, standing in this same kitchen, home for Christmas. Why didn't you ever tell me you wanted me to stay? I hadn't known how to answer then, didn't have the words. I'd thought teaching him to test soil, to read the land, to understand the patient work of stewardship, I thought that was the same as saying I love you. Apparently it wasn't, but maybe now he'd understand. Maybe seeing his own hand in the ledger, preserved across 35 years, would say what I'd failed to. You were always part of this. You always mattered. I closed the ledger, set the phone aside. The coffee pot was empty, dregs dried in the bottom. I washed it, refilled it, set it to brew for morning. Outside, the sleet had stopped, replaced by a cold so deep the silence felt physical. No wind, no sound, just winter holding its breath. My phone buzzed, text from Ethan, landed in Omaha, renting a car, be there around midnight. I typed back, drive careful, roads are bad. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Dad, I don't know what to believe. I stared at the message. Started to type, believe me, deleted it. Started to type, you'll see, deleted that too. Finally, you don't have to believe anything tonight, just get here safe. Okay. Emma called at 8, voice tight with exhaustion. I got us a mediation slot, she said. Monday, 9 a.m. Judge Hendricks. He's old school, grew up on a farm in Tama County. If anyone's going to understand the Century Farm argument, it's him. The auction's tomorrow. I know, but here's the thing. Whatever gets sold tomorrow, we can potentially reverse in mediation. The Century Farm protections apply retroactively if we can prove the sale was conducted under fraudulent pretenses. She paused. Warren, I need to ask you something. How much can you afford to lose? What do you mean? Lyle's smart. He'll start the bidding low, let locals buy equipment, outbuildings, maybe even some acreage. Keep it looking legitimate. But the house and the main farm, he'll have someone there to bid high enough to freeze out competition. Someone representing him without it looking like he's representing him. You're saying he'll buy it through a proxy. Almost certainly. Which means Monday, we're not just arguing with Crystal. We're arguing with someone who has a financial stake in the sale going through. The coffee pot finished brewing, the sound obscenely normal. I poured a cup, burned my tongue on the first sip. The ledger, I said. Will that be enough? It's compelling. 40 years of documented agricultural use, clear evidence of active stewardship. She hesitated. But, Warren, Crystal's lawyer is going to argue that soil testing isn't the same as farming, that you're retired, that the land is essentially residential with nostalgia attached. It's not nostalgia, it's history. I know, and Judge Hendricks might know, but we need more. Papers rustled on her end. The mediation Monday, bring something personal, something that shows what this place means beyond property value. A photo, an object, so something that tells the story the ledger can't. I looked around the kitchen. 43 years of marriage, accumulated in drawers and cabinets. But what told the story? Then I remembered. The oak tree, first anniversary. Crystal had insisted on planting it together, said it would grow with our marriage. I'd been skeptical. Oak trees take decades to mature. But she'd been adamant. We planted it on a Sunday morning in May, dirt under our nails, laughing about something I couldn't remember anymore. I had a photo from that day, somewhere. I'll find something, I told Emma. Good. And Warren, whatever happens tomorrow at the auction, don't go. Don't give them the satisfaction of watching. That's my property they're selling. It's a performance. They want you there, angry, making a scene. Gives them ammunition to claim you're unstable, vindictive, exactly what Crystal's been saying. Her voice softened. Stay home. Be with your son. Let me handle the legal side. After she hung up, I went to the closet in the spare bedroom. Boxes of photos, most of them unsorted, accumulated across decades. I found the wedding album first. White leather, gold embossing, the kind nobody uses anymore. There we were, 25 and 26 years old. Her dress was simple, my suit borrowed from my father. The courthouse steps in the background, the same steps I'd climbed this afternoon. I flipped through slowly. The reception at the VFW hall, dancing to a country song I'd forgotten the name of, cutting the cake. Her laugh caught mid-frame, genuine, unguarded. She'd been real once, or I'd believed she was. The anniversary photos were in a different box. I found the oak tree picture near the bottom, Crystal kneeling in the dirt, hands muddy, smiling at the camera. Me standing behind her, shovel in hand, looking uncomfortable with the whole production. The sapling between us was barely 3 feet tall. Now it was 30 feet, branches thick enough to hold a tire swing. According to Lyle's liquidation plan, it would be gone by spring. I set the photo aside for Monday. Evidence, story, proof that what she was taking wasn't just land. Outside, headlights swept across the kitchen window, a car on the gravel driveway, engine cutting off. Ethan was home. He looked older than I remembered, still had my height, his mother's narrow face, but the lines around his eyes were new. City years, I guessed. Late nights hunched over blueprints, coffee replacing sleep. We stood in the driveway for a moment, neither of us sure how to start. Finally, he just walked over and hugged me. Brief, awkward, but real. Hey, Dad. Hey, yourself. Inside, I made him eggs and toast while he sat at the table, exactly where he used to sit for breakfast before school. The ledger was still there. He glanced at it, but didn't ask. Mom's letter, I said, sliding the plate in front of him. You bring it? He pulled it from his jacket pocket, 3 pages folded carefully. I read it while he ate. It was worse than I'd imagined. Detailed accounts of me forgetting conversations we'd never had. Doctor visits that never happened. A diagnosis that didn't exist. She'd even listed medications I was supposedly taking. Donepezil, memantine, the whole dementia cocktail. She's convincing, Ethan said quietly. The way she writes it, specific dates, details. If I didn't know you better, do you know me better? He met my eyes. I don't know. It's been 4 years. People change, get sick. I handed him the ledger. Look at last Sunday's entry. He flipped to the most recent page, my handwriting steady as ever. 12 plots, 12 measurements, all recorded with the same discipline as 40 years before. Now flip to March 1992. He did, stopped when he saw it, his own backwards S, corrected in my hand beside his. I was 7. You wanted to help. I let you record the number. I poured coffee for both of us. Your mother says I'm losing my mind. That ledger says otherwise. Every Sunday for 40 years, not a single week missed. He turned pages slowly, seeing the progression. His father's hand becoming his grandfather's, becoming his great-grandfather's. A lineage written in PH levels and careful notation. Why would she lie about this? His voice was small. I told him. All of it. The reverse mortgage, the forged signature, Lyle Tremaine, the Century Farm designation, the auction scheduled for tomorrow morning. He listened without interrupting, his eggs going cold on the plate. When I finished, he leaned back in the chair, the same way I did when I was thinking through a problem. So what do we do? That we hit harder than I expected. Saturday morning, I stayed home like Emma had told me. Ethan stayed with me. We did chores, fed the cattle, checked water troughs, cleared ice from the barn gutters. Work that needed doing, auction or no auction. Around 11, my phone rang. Maureen Pike. Warren, you need to know what's happening. I told Emma I wasn't going. I know, but they're saying things. Crystal's lawyer filed a motion this morning claiming you've been negligent. Says the property has no current agricultural use, that it's just residential land. He's got photographs of equipment rust, outbuildings that need repair, fence posts rotting. I looked out at the barn. The rust was real. You can't stop metal from aging. The outbuildings needed work. There's always work on a farm. But neglect? That was different. Maureen, I farm this land. Every season. I know that, but they're making it sound abandoned. And people are believing it. She paused. Eddie Kolchak bought your old disc harrow for $300. Said it looked like it hadn't been used in years. I used it last fall. I believe you. I'm just telling you what's being said. After she hung up, I stood in the kitchen trying to control the rage building in my chest. They were rewriting my life. turning 40 years of stewardship into a story of negligence and decline. Ethan came in from the barn, saw my face. "What happened?" I told him. "That's bullshit." He said it with heat. "I saw you working out there. You're not negligent. Doesn't matter what's true, matters what they can make people believe." Emma called an hour later. "I've got news. Some of it's bad. Some of it's—" She paused. "Actually, some of it's very good. Start with the bad. Lyle bought the house in primary acreage through a shell company. LLC registered in Delaware, filed yesterday. He paid $215,000, well above market for agricultural land, exactly enough to look legitimate. And the good news? I got a chance to depose him this morning. Emergency session, judge allowed it because of Monday's mediation." Papers rustled. "Warren, he broke. Completely. When I threatened him with fraud charges as an accessory, he gave up everything." "Everything?" "The whole scheme. He's been working with Crystal since August. She promised him 20% of the sale price if he could push the liquidation through before you hired a lawyer." Emma's voice had an edge of satisfaction. "But here's the best part. She knew about the Century Farm designation, researched it in August, found the protections, and told Lyle it wouldn't matter because you'd never think to use it. She gambled I wouldn't fight. She gambled wrong, and now I have Lyle's deposition on record. He'll testify Monday that Crystal knowingly tried to circumvent legal protections designed to preserve family farms." Emma paused. "Warren, this changes everything. We're not just arguing abandonment anymore. We're arguing fraud, conspiracy, and deliberate exploitation of estate law loopholes." I sat down hard in the kitchen chair. "Can you reverse the sale?" "If Judge Hendricks rules in our favor Monday, yes. The Century Farm protections apply retroactively. Lyle's purchase gets voided, the reverse mortgage gets reversed, and Crystal faced potential criminal charges." "When did you depose him?" 2 hours ago. He's terrified. Kept asking if he'd go to jail." She laughed, short and sharp. "I told him that depended on how helpful he was willing to be." Ethan was watching me from across the table. I put the phone on speaker so he could hear. "There's one more thing," Emma said. "Crystal doesn't know Lyle flipped yet. Her lawyer doesn't know. They're going into Monday's mediation thinking they have a clean purchase, documented negligence, and a solid case for liquidation. So we have surprise on our side. We have truth on our side. The surprise is just tactical advantage." After Emma hung up, Ethan and I sat in the kitchen while afternoon light slanted through the windows. Outside, the fields lay dormant under frozen ground, waiting for spring. "Monday," Ethan said. "You need me to testify?" "I don't know yet. Because I will, if you need me to." I looked at my son, 42 years old, architect, city life, everything I tried to protect him from by pushing him away, and here he was anyway, offering to stand beside me. "Let me show you something," I said. I got the anniversary photo from the spare room, set it on the table. Crystal and me, the oak sapling between us. "First anniversary. Your mother insisted we plant it together." I pointed out the window at the oak, massive now against the gray sky. "Lyle's liquidation plan says it has to come down. Parking access." Ethan stared at the tree. 42 years of growth. "Some things take time. Your mother forgot that, or stopped caring." He picked up the photo, studied it. "You should bring this Monday. Show them what she's really taking." Emma said the same thing. Then Emma's smart. He set the photo down carefully. "Dad, I'm sorry for staying away so long. You had your reasons. Bad ones." We sat in the quiet kitchen while the sun dropped toward the horizon. Tomorrow was Sunday. I'd test the soil like always, record the numbers in the ledger. 40 years in 1 week. Some rituals survive anything. Sunday morning, I woke at 5:30 like always. The habit ran deeper than thought, deeper than choice. Ethan was asleep in his old room, the door half open the way he used to leave it as a kid. I made coffee in the dark kitchen, watching steam rise in the cold air. Outside, the thermometer read 12 degrees. The kind of cold that makes metal brittle, makes mistakes costly. I should have felt ready. Emma had the deposition. The ledger proved stewardship. Ethan was here, willing to testify. We had truth on our side. Instead, I felt tired. 43 years of marriage, ending in a courthouse with lawyers and depositions and a judge deciding who got to keep what. Crystal would walk away with nothing, face fraud charges, maybe criminal prosecution. I'd keep the farm, keep my name intact, win, but what would be left after winning? I pulled on my coat and boots, grabbed the soil probe and the ledger, walked out into the frozen morning. The fields were invisible in the pre-dawn dark, but I knew them by heart. Every rise and depression, every spot where water pooled in spring, every section that needed lime or drainage or just patience. Plot 1. The probe went into the frozen earth hard, requiring force. I drove it down with my boot heel, pulled the sample, tested it under the barn light. 6.8. Same as last week, same as 50 weeks a year, for 4 decades. I recorded the number in the ledger, my handwriting unchanged despite everything. Plot 2, plot 3. The ritual carried me forward, muscle memory and discipline. By plot 7, the sun was starting to rise, gray light filtering through gray clouds. My hands ached from the cold despite the gloves. My back reminded me I was 68, not 40. I sat on the tailgate of the truck, thermos of coffee beside me, looking at the fields. This land had taken everything from me, my youth, my education, my marriage. It had demanded every Sunday morning, every season, every year of my adult life. And I'd given it willingly. Was I a fool for that? For choosing dirt and tradition over a wife who wanted more? For pushing away a son because I was afraid he'd be trapped the same way I was? The coffee had gone lukewarm. I drank it anyway, tasting bitterness and habit. Deacon found me there an hour later, still sitting on the tailgate, ledger open on my lap. Figured I'd find you here. He climbed up beside me, joints cracking. We sat in silence for a while, watching nothing happen in the frozen fields. Emma told me about tomorrow, he finally said. Told me you've got Lyle's testimony, the Century Farm protection, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. So why do you look like a man who's already lost? I closed the ledger, ran my hand over the worn cover. You remember pulling me out of that Huey in '69? Remember? I still got the scar where the shrapnel went through. You ever regret it? Carrying me out instead of saving yourself faster? Not once. Why not? He looked at me like I'd asked why the sky was up. Because you don't leave your people behind. It's not complicated, Warren. What if your people leave you first? Crystal? Ethan, too, for 4 years. I pushed him away because I didn't want him trapped here like I was. And now he's back, but only because his mother tried to steal from both of us. I set the ledger aside. I'm tired, Deacon. Tired of fighting. Part of me thinks maybe I should just let it go. Sell the damn farm, split the money, end this before it destroys what's left. You don't mean that. Don't I? What am I really fighting for? 127 years of family history? My father died at 53, worked himself to death on this land. His father the same. Is that a legacy worth preserving? Deacon was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out something wrapped in a handkerchief. He unwrapped it carefully. An old farmer's almanac, pages yellowed and brittle, dated 1952. Your old man gave me this when I came back from Korea. I was 22, didn't know what to do with myself, couldn't sleep, couldn't settle. He said, "You need roots now, something that doesn't move, doesn't change, doesn't care about the war you saw." Deacon ran his fingers over the cover. He taught me to read the land, same way he taught you, same way you taught Ethan, whether he knew it or not. He handed it to me. I opened it carefully. Inside the front cover, my father's handwriting. For Deacon, some things survive anything. Make sure you're one of them. Your father knew what this land cost, Deacon said. And he chose it anyway. Not because he was trapped, because he understood something most people don't, that some things are bigger than one life, bigger than one marriage, bigger than being tired. What if I'm not strong enough? You carried your father's death at 19, ran this farm alone, raised a son, tested soil every Sunday for 40 years, even when it didn't make sense, even when it hurt. He looked at me directly. Warren, you're the strongest man I know, and I knew men who walked through fire. The sun had fully risen now, weak and pale behind the clouds. The fields remained frozen, dormant, waiting. Monday, Deacon said, you're going to walk into that courthouse. You're going to show them what stewardship looks like. And you're going to win, not because you're angry, because you're right. He climbed down from the tailgate, joints protesting. Keep the almanac. Your father would want you to have it now. After he left, I sat with the almanac in my hands, reading my father's inscription again and again. Some things survive anything. Inside the house, Ethan was awake, making breakfast. I could smell bacon frying, coffee brewing fresh. Through the kitchen window, I could see him moving around, comfortable in a space he'd run from 4 years ago, Maybe that was the point, not that we stayed, but that we could come back. I finished the soil testing, plots 8 through 12, recorded each number with the same precision as always. When I walked back to the house, Ethan met me at the door. "Mom called," he said quietly. "Asked if I'd testify for her tomorrow. Said you were being vindictive, that I should think about my inheritance." "What did you tell her?" He handed me a plate of eggs and bacon. I told her I already knew who I was testifying for. The courthouse looked different on Monday morning. Same red brick, same white columns, same worn limestone steps, but now it felt like a gauntlet. Emma met us in the lobby, briefcase in one hand, coffee in the other. She wore a charcoal suit, hair pulled back severe, all business. When she saw Ethan beside me, something flickered across her face. Surprise, then calculation. "Mr. Hollis," she said, extending her hand to Ethan. "Emma Ferris." "Ethan, I'm here to testify if you need me." She glanced at me, question in her eyes. I nodded. "Good. We might." She checked her watch. "Mediation starts in 20 minutes. Judge Hendricks is fair but impatient. We present our case clean and tight. Let the evidence do the work. And if Crystal's lawyer fights it, he will. That's his job. But Warren, he doesn't know about Lyle's deposition yet. Doesn't know his entire case just collapsed." She smiled, sharp and quick. "We're walking in with ammunition they don't know exists." The mediation room was on the 3rd floor, down a corridor that smelled like old wood polish and fluorescent dust. Crystal was already there when we arrived, sitting beside her lawyer, the cologne-drenched man from Friday. She looked up when we entered, her eyes going to Ethan first, then to me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Judge Hendricks entered, and we all stood. He was maybe 75, tall and lean, wearing glasses that sat crooked on his nose. He had the weathered look of someone who'd spent more time outdoors than in. "Sit," he said, taking his place at the head of the table. "Let's get this done efficiently. I've read the briefs from both sides. Mrs. Ferris, you're claiming Century Farm protections apply?" "Yes, Your Honor. The Hollis Farm has been in continuous family ownership since 1897. Iowa Code Section 10.7 provides specific protections against forced liquidation." Crystal's lawyer, his nameplate read Mitchell Vance, leaned forward. "Your Honor, the Century Farm designation requires active agricultural use. My client contends that Mr. Hollis has effectively abandoned farming operations. The property is residential in nature, not agricultural." "I have evidence to the contrary," Emma said. She opened her briefcase, pulled out the ledger, set it on the table like a weapon. "This is Mr. Hollis's soil testing record. 40 years of weekly entries, 12 plots tested every Sunday without fail, pH levels, crop rotation notes, equipment maintenance schedules." Judge Hendricks pulled the ledger toward him, opened it carefully. He didn't say anything for a long time, just turned pages reading. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. "This is remarkable," he finally said. "It's also proof of continuous agricultural stewardship," Emma continued. "Mr. Hollis has maintained this land according to best practices for 4 decades. There is no abandonment, no negligence. Just disciplined, documented farming." Vance cleared his throat. "Record-keeping doesn't constitute farming, Your Honor. Actual crop production, livestock management, commercial agricultural activity. That's what qualifies as active use." "Mr. Hollis rotates crops annually and maintains a small cattle operation," Emma said. "But more importantly, the Century Farm statute doesn't require commercial-scale production. It requires stewardship, and this ledger proves stewardship beyond any reasonable doubt." Judge Hendricks looked at me. "Mr. Hollis, is this your handwriting?" "Yes, sir." "Every entry?" "Every Sunday since 1985. Before that, my father's. Before that, his father's." He turned more pages, slower now, stopped on one. "This entry here, the handwriting changes mid-page." Oh, I knew which one without looking. "March 1992, my son helped me that day. He was 7. Ethan leaned forward. "That's my handwriting, Your Honor. My father taught me to test soil that morning." Judge Hendricks looked at Ethan, then at the ledger, then at me. "And you've kept this record for 33 years since?" "Yes, sir. Every week." Crystal's face had gone pale. She was staring at the ledger like it had betrayed her. Vance regrouped quickly. "Your Honor, while Mr. Hollis's record-keeping is admirable, it doesn't address the financial reality. A reverse mortgage was legally obtained." "Through forgery," Emma interrupted. She pulled out another document. Handwriting analysis conducted by a certified expert. Mr. Hollis's signature on the reverse mortgage application is a forgery. His middle name is consistently spelled Lewis across 40 years of documents. The mortgage application spells it Luis. She laid out the comparison. Tax returns, county extension reports, the ledger signature, all showing Lewis. Then the mortgage application, Luis. Judge Hendricks studied them through his crooked glasses. Mrs. Hollis, did you sign this application on your husband's behalf? Crystal's lawyer touched her arm, but she pulled away. He was busy. I handled the paperwork. Did you have his permission to sign his name? Silence. Mrs. Hollis, I need an answer. He never paid attention to the paperwork, she said, voice tight. 43 years? I handled everything. He didn't care as long as the bills got paid. That's not permission, Judge Hendricks said quietly. That's fraud. Vance tried to salvage it. Your Honor, even if there were irregularities in the mortgage process. Irregularities? Emma's voice was sharp. Judge, I have one more piece of evidence. She pulled out a thick document stapled and tabbed. A deposition taken Saturday morning from Lyle Tremaine, the estate liquidator who purchased the Hollis property. Crystal's head snapped up. Vance went very still. In this deposition, Mr. Tremaine admits to conspiring with Mrs. Hollis since August. She promised him 20% of the sale proceeds if he could expedite the liquidation before Mr. Hollis retained legal counsel. Emma turned a page. He also testifies that Mrs. Hollis researched Century Farm Protections in August and told him, quote, "It won't matter because the old man won't think to use it." The room went silent. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hum quieter. Judge Hendricks looked at Crystal, then at Vance, then at the deposition. Mrs. Hollis knowingly attempted to circumvent legal protections designed to preserve family farmland? Yes, Your Honor. He set the papers down, removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly with a handkerchief from his pocket. When he put them back on, his expression had hardened. Here's my ruling. The reverse mortgage is voided due to fraud. The Saturday auction sale is reversed under Century Farm Protections. Mr. Hollis retains full ownership of the property. He looked at Crystal. Mrs. Hollis, you're fortunate this is civil court. I'm recommending the county attorney review this case for potential criminal charges. Crystal stood abruptly, chair scraping. You can't. I can, and I have. We're done here. Vance gathered his papers quickly, quietly. Crystal stood frozen, staring at the ledger still open on the table, at her son sitting beside his father, at 43 years disappearing into a legal ruling. She looked at me once. I didn't look away. Then she walked out, heels clicking down the marble corridor, getting fainter, then gone. Crystal moved to Omaha within a week. Maureen called to tell me, her voice careful, like she was delivering news of a death. She took what she could fit in her car, Maureen said. Left the rest. Real estate license is suspended pending investigation. Word is she's working retail at one of those outlet malls. I didn't ask which one. Didn't need to know. Warren, I'm sorry for not telling you sooner about seeing her with Lyle. It's done now. Still, I should have. Maureen, it's done. After she hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with the ledger open, adding the day's entries. Mid-March now, the ground starting to thaw. Mud season, we called it. That awkward time between winter's freeze and spring's promise when everything turns to soup. Ethan had stayed, not permanently. He had a life in Denver, clients waiting, projects half finished. But he'd taken 2 weeks, said he needed to help with spring preparation. We both knew it was more than that. He was learning the land again. Or maybe learning it for the first time, now that he was old enough to understand what it meant. That afternoon, we walked the fence line together, checking posts that had heaved during the freeze-thaw cycles. The air smelled like wet earth and last year's dead grass, that particular scent of ground coming back to life. You ever regret it? Ethan asked. Not selling, not taking the money and starting over somewhere else. Every day, I said. And never. He laughed, short and surprised. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. I tested a post, found it solid. Your mother wanted more than this. She wasn't wrong for wanting it. She was wrong for how she tried to get it. You loved her. I did. Maybe still do in some form. But love doesn't mean you let someone steal from you. Doesn't mean you surrender what your father built and his father before him. I moved to the next post. Love is complicated. Land is simple. You work it, it works for you. You neglect it, it shows you the cost. Which one am I? He asked quietly. Land or love? I stopped, looked at him. 42 years old, my face on a younger frame, his mother's intensity in his eyes. You're the reason I fought, I said. Not just for me, for the chance that someday you might want to come back, even if it was just to see what I'd protected. He nodded, didn't say anything. We finished the fence line in silence, the comfortable kind. April came with green, pushing through brown. The oak tree near the house budded first, small leaves unfurling like tiny fists opening. I stood under it one morning, coffee in hand, looking at branches that had grown from 3 feet to 30. Ethan found me there. Emma called, wants to know if you're coming to the Century Farm marker ceremony. When is it? Saturday. They do one every year, recognize families who've hit the 100-year mark. He paused. She said you can bring someone. You going back to Denver this week? Not till Sunday. Then I guess I'm bringing someone. Saturday was warm, the first real warmth since November. The ceremony was held at the county fairgrounds, folding chairs set up under a pavilion, maybe 50 people in attendance. Most were farmers, their families, faces weathered by sun and work and time. Judge Hendricks was there, presenting the certificates. When he called my name, Ethan stood up with me. We walked to the front together. The judge shook our hands, gave me the certificate, heavy paper, embossed seal, Hollis Family Farm, 1897-2024, 127 years of continuous stewardship. Congratulations, Warren. You fought for this. You earned it. The crowd applauded, polite and genuine. I looked out at the faces. Neighbors who'd known my father, who'd watched me grow up, who'd seen Crystal leave and hadn't known what to say. Deacon was there in the back row, coffee cup in hand, even at a formal ceremony. He raised it slightly when our eyes met, a salute, a reminder, some things survive anything. After the ceremony, Ethan and I drove back to the farm in comfortable quiet. The fields were ready for planting, soil rich and dark, where I'd already worked it. The oak tree stood against the spring sky, branches full now, leaves catching sunlight. That evening, we drilled the first rows of corn together. Ethan on the tractor, me riding behind, watching the planter drop seeds in perfect spacing. The diesel smell mixed with fresh earth, the rattle of seed corn in the hopper, a sound I'd heard every spring for 48 years. When we finished the first field, Ethan shut off the engine. In the sudden quiet, I could hear meadowlarks calling from the fence line. "Dad," he said, not turning around, "can I add my test results to the ledger?" I pulled the book from my jacket pocket, handed it forward with a pen. He opened it to today's page, wrote carefully, Plot 1, 6.9. His handwriting had changed since he was 7, steadier now, confident, but the backward S was still there in my memory, permanent as the land itself. I got a text from Crystal 3 weeks later, middle of the night, the kind of hour when regret feels sharpest. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen in the dark bedroom, the blue glow harsh against the silence. Outside, spring peepers sang in the drainage ditch, the sound filtering through the open window along with cool air that smelled like growing things. I didn't reply, just set the phone face down and listened to the frogs. Some conversations are already finished before they start. Some estates are settled, some are just closed. The land would outlast us both. That was enough. Ethan flew back to Denver on Sunday, but called every few days. Asked about pH levels, rainfall, whether the corn was coming up even. Small things, the language we'd finally learned to speak. He'd be back in June, he said. Wanted to help with cultivation, maybe stay through harvest if his firm could spare him. Maybe. I didn't push. Didn't need to anymore. The ledger sits on the kitchen table now, open to this week's entry. 2 sets of handwriting, mine and his, side by side. The pages are filling up again, the way they're supposed to. Outside, the oak tree is fully leafed, casting shade across the porch where my father used to sit and watch thunderstorms roll in from the west. The bronze Century Farm marker catches morning light, weathered but permanent. Some mornings I still wake up and reach for Crystal's warmth before remembering she's gone. Some mornings I walk the fence line and think about 43 years compressed into a legal ruling and a text I never answered. But most mornings I just make coffee, pull on my boots, and walk out into the fields while the sun is still deciding whether to rise. The soil doesn't ask questions, doesn't judge, doesn't lie. It just waits, patient and honest, for hands willing to do the work. And after 68 years I finally understand. That's not a burden, it's grace.